Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again in this YouTube astrological segment. We'll be talking about transit Neptune conjunct one's natal Saturn. And when you have transits that involve Neptune, they can be about dissipation, idealism, inspiration, deception, duplicity. When you have transit Neptune conjoining one's natal Saturn, well, this may manifest a lot of dissipation, dissolving, idealism, inspiration, deception, duplicity. It could be in matters with one's career. It can be where maybe one might be hurt by self-deception in terms of what they can actually accomplish in one's career, but it could also manifest in idealism and being able to set very high heights, if you will, and prodigious heights in terms of what may be attained, and it may very well be attainable. And it could also be a time too where one might see the dissipation or dissolving in one's reputation and public image, but it could also be about getting that public image or reputation, doing something Neptune related, such as something with the metaphysical, which includes astrology, or simply be somebody that's very altruistic, compassionate, and self-sacrificing. Now, another thing too is that Saturn can be connected with our status, and it might be something too where you might have dreams of reaching a certain status or stature in life and trying to make those fantasies, try to convert them into a reality at this time. And it can be a time to remember that Saturn is also connected with the father and older people. So it might be a time where your father, or it might be some older person that's prominent in your life scheme, may somewhat dissolve, not literally dissolve, but I mean, they may disappear for a little period of time, or might require some isolation, or even the connection might dissipate or dissolve with these people at this time. And the thing about this too is that Saturn is also connected with old age. So it might be a time too where on the positive side of this could be expressed in defying old age, at least superficially, by your appearance. You might appear to be a little bit younger than you actually are in your years, because remember that Neptune is about dissolving and dissipation, and it might maybe dissolve some, as far as your aging at this time, to some degree, at least superficially. And also, this could be a time to well, in another way, unfortunately, that can manifest and pan out. It might be about weakness that you might be experiencing due to older age. If, say, if this is in Pisces, it might be something, with the feet or the toes, or maybe a weakened immune system, or issues with the lymphatic system at this time. It could be a time too where, remember that Saturn is also about timekeeping. You might feel at this time where your time to do things might be dissolving, or you might be inspired to try to do something in a certain amount of time, understanding what time is about, or it might be a time, no pun intended, that you feel at this time that you could be very idealistic regarding the time that you have to accomplish something. Sometimes it might manifest in wasting time, because Neptune could be very lethargic, very relaxed energy. So you might find yourself maybe using your time to fantasize and daydream, as in contrast to actually doing something and taking action on a certain activity or endeavor. Saturn is also associated with laborious and hard work. So, of course, this can manifest in a multitude of ways. Remember that Neptune conjunctions in astrology are neutral. They can have good and bad elements to it. It can be doing something Neptune related, or as far as work goes, it might be doing something to metaphysical, which includes astrology or poetry, dancing, photography, anesthesiology. It may also be a time too where you really don't feel like working laboriously, and it might be something where you may be more inclined time to relax and really just take a break from working at this time. You might feel more like sleeping in contrast to actually working hard. And it can be a time to, I mean, anatomically speaking, Saturn is connected to the skin, the teeth, the bones, joints, hamstrings, um, and it might be a time where you might feel there might be some weakening in these areas at this time. Remember, Neptune can be connected with very weakened energy, and it might be a time as well where you're looking at, I mean, Saturn is also associated with chronic debilitations, so it might be something Neptune related that might be, that may be a chronic debilitation at this time, something with the feet, the toes, the lymphatic or immune system. It might be something at this time as well where you might be trying to do something to dissolve a chronic debilitation, so to speak. And it might be a time as well looking at this, and keep in mind that Saturn is also connected with our restrictions and limitations. So it might be a time where you're trying to evaporate or dissolve some kind of restriction or limitation in your life, but it could also be careful too, because Neptune can be very delusional. You might be trying to act like you can work through these restrictions and limitations without much problem, and you might deceive yourself in terms of what restrictions you may have, or they might be something that might be connected with self-sabotage, and restrictions you might feel you have may not really exist, or at least not as strongly as you believe. Saturn is also associated with fears. So again, this could be, you might be experiencing maybe an imagined or distorted fear at this time, or maybe there's simply some fear of attaining something Neptune related, such as an ideal or a dream or fantasy, or doing something that can be Neptune related, such as something like the metaphysical, which includes astrology or poetry or dancing, and doing it's something where it might be more of a fear of just being deceived more so than usual, maybe especially if you're a person that has dealt with deception, duplicity for a good part of your life. Now another way this can manifest is that this could be about confusion over your responsibilities and your career perhaps at this time. Say if this is in Aquarius as an example, it might be something with altruism, or whether when to express yourself, when to altruistically help others. It may be doing something with troubleshooting computers. If you're working at a position where you're working on fixing computers, maybe it's something where you're not sure which ones you're supposed to be troubleshooting, as an example. And and if it's if it falls in Aquarius, it might be about confusion over when to be that team player, or when you do things more independently. So those are some examples how that can pan out. Now, another thing too, it might be a time where you're able to maybe perhaps dissolve a restriction or a fear. Say if this falls in Taurus in your 12th house as an example, it may be about maybe there's some kind of fear you have in terms of putting the foot down, so to speak, which is Taurus energy, against hidden adversaries, which is the 12th house, people perhaps that are actually your enemies, that are impersonating friends. Now, another thing too, it could be some kind of Neptune related structure and discipline you may experience at this time. For example, it could be something with spirituality, maybe something with the metaphysical, which includes astrology. Also too, Neptune is connected with forgiveness and surrendering. So it could be a time where you might, if you've held a grudge against somebody for a protracted period and been somewhat vindictive or vengeful or what have you, it could be a time where you might express more forgiveness and really surrendering to some degree, and it could lead to greater maturation and maturity at this time, which of course is associated with Saturn. Hold on a moment, people. And also, too, this transit may be expressed by doing some kind of Neptune connected work. Work can be connected with Saturn. It might be doing some kind of, it could be doing prison work, working in the metaphysical, which can include astrology, poetry, dancing, photography, working in filmography. It could be doing something with the paranormal, if that is something you believe in, something with spirituality, working doing some kind of foot profession. I don't know if that's a podiatrist, or may want to look that up and confer that on the internet. But anyway, now in some isolated cases, this could also manifest in some kind of imprisonment or incarceration for something Saturn related, like business crime, like business fraud, or it could be a government related crime, maybe in dentistry. What you're saying, how could how could someone commit a crime in dentistry? Well, there's actually a multitude of ways. I mean, it could be somebody simply impersonating a dentist, pretending to showing some kind of fake degree in dentistry, or license to practice it. It could be stealing that. I don't know if it's called anesthesia from the dentist from a dentist's office. If you're a dentist, you decide to bring it home and try to sell it, as an example. But anyway, it could also be a time that's very introspective and introverted for you. This could be a time where you might this time feel more desolate and alone compared to how you might have felt previously. You might feel, it might be a greater time for isolation. Remember that Neptune is associated with isolation. Saturn can be very depressing energy, so let's be careful to be prudent at this time if you're having this transit, that this isolation doesn't lead to you becoming overly melancholy or despondent or depressive at this time. Now, in isolated cases, it could also manifest in some kind of weakness. And Neptune is connected with weakness, deterioration. It could be of the bones, the knees, the joints, the hamstrings. It could also be a chronic debilitation. That's Neptune related. Saturn can be connected with chronic debilitations. Neptune, of course, is associated with the feet, the toes, the lymphatic, the immune system. It could even be alcoholism in some cases, or drugs. So if it's somebody that you're doing some kind of alcohol or drugs, it could be very it's possible it might be more intensified at this time. If there's somebody that's a social drinker, as an example, just be careful that it doesn't escalate at this time, because again, Saturn can be connected with chronic illnesses and debilitations. Neptune is associated with alcohol and drugs. And anyway, people, that will conclude this YouTube astrological segment. Until next time, people, Edwin Learnard says, stay well.